Recording. Thank you, everybody, for participating and coming to our second of year statewide ODE LTCT meeting. It's 9 a.m. and we are recording it, and we will post it on ODE's YouTube channel. And I'm still working on that. So I think everyone is unmuted. So let's go around introductions for the people here in the room. My name is Sam. I'm with Oregon Department of Ed. Candace?
Yes. I'm Candace Cardiff. I'm the education director here at the Child Center.
And thank you, Candace, for hosting us.
I'm Dan Strasser with Polk Adolescent Day Treatment Center in Dallas.
Melissa Stalder with Springfield Public Schools. Heather Murray with Springfield Public Schools. Rebecca Morgan with Springfield Public Schools.
Ryan Chandler with Douglas ESD Therapeutic Learning Classroom Coordinator.
Brian Henson, Special Ed Director for Douglas ESD.
My name is Mark Beach. I work here at the Child Center.
And we have also Jean Orr from LBL ESD for Children's Firehold, Old Mill, and Wake Robin, but she just stepped out of the room right now. And people on participating via VTEL, there's 14 of you. All of you are unmuted. If you could introduce yourselves.
Martha Plant, I work for class.
Sandy Bowles and Sheila Hagan from Lincoln County School District.
Vera Stola, Boys and Girls Aid, Portland.
Sandy Bishop and Sarah Osman from the High Desert ESD.
Julie Smith from Pendleton School District, Homestead Family and Youth Services.
Allison McNeil, Northland School District, and Carolyn Acker, Cairo.
Sarah Walker, Northwest ESD, the day treatment program there.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you for everyone participating. Good to see or hear all of your voices. And without further ado, I'll just go into our PowerPoint, which this time I sent out earlier, because I wanted everyone to see the agenda and the PowerPoint, and if you had any questions, and that's what today's meeting, well, a lot of it will be about. But also, we have some business people like Melissa here, and I want to show people how we do our calculations, because I've gotten a request to have calculations for next year by Monday. So but I don't know. I'll try my best because of their payment, because of their postings and so forth. So our next meeting is probably will be May 17th, Friday. Location to be determined. Oh, we have two more people joining. Hello, hi. Do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Hey, I'm Sarah. I work at Wenlock School, Long-Term Care and Treatment over in Portland.
Okay. And our next meeting will be May 17th, Friday. Location to be determined. And once that's, and I'll send that out later. Agenda, we have introductions, methodology of how LTCT allocations are calculated, preview of the draft agreement language for 1921, an opportunity for LTCT stakeholders and to provide guidance and input on a proposal for the competitive selection and designation of OD LTCT sites for 21-23 biennia, and tour of the Child Center. Sorry. Okay, so contact info for hospitals, JFLTCT, Department of Corrections. This is our unit, and I was conversing with Jean right now. My supervisor is Dr. Candace Pell. We don't have a director right now, so I report to her directly. And I was joking with Jean. I've had so many different supervisors over the years. So our funding, this is how our funding is. We have basically 4 sources, and the 5th is really up in the air. And the 4 are Oregon general funds from the legislative approved budget. Right now, I sent out a couple of weeks ago, the governor's recommended budget had us at a 12% reduction. That's roughly 50% of our funding. And then our state school fund, that is by slots times net operating expense. And then also federal IDA and federal Title I and our LTCT cash reserves. Now, hopefully, people will be able to see my spreadsheet. So this is how we get from our slots. Ooh, darn. Okay, so from ODE, oh, you guys can't see that one. And slideshow. Okay.
Will it drag over?
Can people on remote see the OD webpage? Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. So the net operating expense is posted pretty much every so often, and that's where we get our net operating expense. And then our state school fund unit will post the next one probably the first week of March, and from there, and then that spreadsheet looks like this. It has all the net operating expense for every single school district and so forth. But then the number that's relevant to us is the bottom. You know how it goes. So this year for 17-18 it was 9,700 per slot. You know, and so forth. Like for let's see, like for it goes like you can see your net operating expense, and then I wonder if I can find Springfield, since Springfield is here. Here's Springfield School District 19. I guess these are your net operating expenses. It goes all the way. Is that about right? 9,200? Around there. So what we use is we use a statewide average of all the school districts' net operating expense, and that year. So then for next year, they haven't figured that, they haven't calculated everyone's. So that's how we get our state school fund, by the slot number times net operating expense. And then our general fund, unfortunately, it got cut 12%, and then partly because when I first started LTCT, when Sharice Loop went on military leave, we had 47 sites. In all these other years, you know, our general fund has been stable, but recently sites, small and large, have closed down, like Youth Villages or the Christie School, Lithia Springs in Southern Oregon, Hand in Hand, Chehalem Family Youth Services, you know, and then there's others, you know, that have Gold Hill and Central Point, you know, some sites have closed down. So I think they finally caught up to us. Hey, if you have less students, less sites, your general fund should also be cut. So that's part of the reason why we have a 12% cut. And that was not our recommendation, believe me. Yeah, and then from here, from the survey that you guys provide, this is 18-19. It's the slots, classrooms, the number of EAs, teacher salary, and it's a straight formula where there's a teacher salary, EA salary total. It's like the number of classrooms times the teacher salary, number of classrooms times 2 for the EA, and then we calculate the 15%, because the formula is 1 teacher, 2 EAs plus 15% for overhead. And then that's the MSO total. And then we have to calculate, and then, so the total was 25 million. You know, if we funded everybody at 100%. So we had to figure out what, from our state school fund and from our general fund, what is our available revenue? And our available revenue was 71%. But we're funding everybody at 77% because we're using unused 15, 17 funds to supplement everybody. So that's how we fund. That's why, that's where I tell people, I think it's 70 actually, you know, 77% and so forth. Now, the difficult part I have for 1921 is I use this invoice, like for instance, this is an invoice, this is a master spreadsheet that has each contractor's contract amount with their Title 1D and their invoices and so forth. So I can tell how much is unspent and how much is being spent and so forth. And then I have a master spreadsheet on the very front that shows the unspent, and that's how I can estimate how much has been spent, how much has not been spent. Like, and then, like for instance, like I know Sandy's here, and she has a really good business person. Like here's the invoice amount, and so forth. And so far, they've been invoicing regularly. They're caught up, you know. But some school districts, what's hard is some school districts, they haven't been invoicing regularly. So I can't, like I just processed the, literally yesterday, an invoice for quarters 1 through 4 of last year. You know, it just came in and so forth. So, but it's only one site. I mean, they only have one classroom there. So it varies. So, so for moving in, so that when I look at that spreadsheet, I use this spreadsheet to estimate what's our like cash available is going to be. Like right here, from unspent was 2 million, you know, and then unspent was like 50 million. And then the reason why is a lot of the invoices have not been in for this year and so forth. So, and then, so I have, some people have spent all of their amounts, which is allowable and so forth. So that's how, I can close this. So that's how that's the methodology that we use, or I use, to determine your amounts for next year. Any questions?
Just to clarify, you're saying that the MSO amount would normally be 71%, but you're projecting by use of these unspent funds to put it up at 77%.
No, that was for 17, 18. I mean 18, 19.
That was 18, 19.
Yes, yes.
So what are you looking at then for 19, 20 in terms of the MSO amount percentage?
I can't tell you that now. And the reason why is because not everybody has submitted their survey results on their slot count, their teacher salary, and their EA salary. Like on Monday, I'm going to send another email out, you know, to certain individuals. You haven't submitted, you know, I don't have their teacher salary, I don't have their EA salaries yet, and so forth. And then for me, it's like I have deadlines. You know, when I ask for a certain time, and then some people they send, you know, it's like I can pull up like what I have, and it's not that great. You know, like that's the thing. Like just like with the Title 1D, I send reminders out. Please, you know, I still need and so forth. So I don't have all the teacher salaries. I don't have all the EA salaries yet, and so and then it's dependent upon and so forth. But I think.
So are you thinking it's going to be closer to the 71% than the 77%?
No. I'm thinking perhaps we're going to try to keep it around the 77 or 75, 76.
Okay.
Yeah. But my big concern is I've already talked with some business managers, and their teacher and EA rates are going up because of the PERS. Yeah. So and then I'm concerned about that. Yeah, so that's the thing. And then the thing is, I can do an estimate like next week or Monday, but it'll be based on my estimate of the net operating expense, not the old official net operating expense. And it'll be based on the governor's recommended budget of 12% reduction. But in all reality, once the co-chairs has come up with their budget, that is pretty much it. But then the co-chairs has not come out with their co-chairs recommended budget yet. And that will probably be March or April. And then I've been told this biennium we have two, in the Senate side, we have two new ones. Senator Betsy Johnson and Senator Hayward Steiner. They are the two co-chairs. So they will be doing the budgets.
And when I submitted our numbers, I based it on the 18-19 salary because we're in negotiations. We're bargaining right now with our teacher salaries, so we don't have a set salary schedule at this time.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you if you could resubmit, and then add like 3% or like whichever. Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you kept it at 18-19, and if you guys do give an increase, then you're going to be shortchanged.
Exactly, and we will be.
Yes.
We just don't know.
Yeah. So I would recommend you to resubmit with an estimate of what you feel is reasonable.
I'll touch my best.
Yeah. And then the reason why I do that is because, and at the end, it's always a wash, because when you submit your invoices for the 8th quarter, it's actually reimbursement. Although we have a payment schedule, it's how much you actually spend. Yeah, so that's how we do. Any questions for people on VTEL? No questions? Okay, we're gonna go to the next. Our draft agreement, not that many changes. So here is our current contract.
Okay, what were you saying? So
Can we try just a one-time fee?
Yeah, I think we'll have to make sure with the districts that.
Oh,
And if the 180 days does pass, will our contracts change as well?
Our contract already has a 180 days now. In your current contract, like here, it talks about you're supposed to already have 180 days. This is our current contract language. The only change that we're thinking of putting into is, and I can do define control find 180. Like here, it's under paragraph 3. At least 25 hours a week, 25 hours, and so forth. The only contract language that we're thinking of doing is number 18. Contractor would adhere to their school district ESD policies and procedures. Below is not an exclusive list. Awarding credits, diplomas, notification of parents, students of student progress, placement of students into courses, and review of report card and transcripts. And then this is generally towards the high schools because we're finding some of our JDEP, LTCT, and YSIP sites, they're not sending report cards home, or they're not, they're just giving it to the PO or the case manager and so forth. But parents need to be kept abreast. And if your school district says it'll be mailed home at the term and mid-term, like mid-quarter and at the end of the quarter, you should also be adhering to that. It's like we're trying to get our kids to be followed the same as your school district, and so forth. So, and especially of awarding credits and diplomas, and then we're spending a lot of time this year, with transcripts and so forth. And there is a push where we want high schools. I'm going to put in ask high school LTCT sites that have high school programs to be accredited, to work towards accreditation. Right, so like here's accreditation. Yeah, we're gonna ask. So like here, 13, recipient will strive for LTCT, and I'll send this Word document out, like draft, and so forth. Recipient will strive for LTCT high school fund to maintain and comply with the accreditation requirements for advanced ed, other accreditation or approved by, and so forth. And this is so that once, the credits earned in our programs will be accepted by the neighborhood K-12 high schools. Because, some kids, and like we've gotten calls, oh, they're not taking our credits, and so forth. But then if you're accredited, that they will take your credits. And then I know MESD, it's in April, right? Yeah, in April, they're doing not a Win-Watts or the hospital or the dump, they're doing a total ESD-wide accreditation. And it's like 4 days, right? It's 3 or 4 days. Normally high school accreditations are like 2 days, but because they're doing a system-wide, it's more involved, and it's going to encompass all of their programs, not just JDEP or YSEP or LTC. It's going to be all of their programs that fall under MESD. Yeah. And I'll send this out. Any thoughts on number 18 or the accreditation or any comments or feedback for high school programs?
At LifeWorks, we work with the Northwest Regional ESD, and they're able to put credits on on transcripts for the school district. So I don't know what that means exactly, if that means that they're accredited, but all the credits that our kids earn here go directly onto their transcripts.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want our credits to be, that's the same at Paddock too, right, Dan?
Yes.
Yep. And then your site, it's a Dallas School District transcript, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's not a Paddock. And that's what we're hoping for. Like, for instance, when the kids leave our LTCT sites, it's a school district transcript or like tied to alternative ed, so that there's more credits, and then the neighborhood high schools will take the credits here and so forth. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding this? Okay, and then next item on our agenda, let me talk about the proposal first, and then I'll ask for feedback and questions. Okay, so we're asking for questions on, this is just not working. I'll just go this way. There's a necessity for change in how OD operates LTCT. Ever since I took over, and even before I knew of the quote, the Christie's list, when, as I said, we had 47, and we never added to that 47 because the rationale was our general fund, let's say, is 18.9 million. If we went from 37 to 50, then 50 people would dividing that 18.9 million, and everyone's share of the pie would shrink. There's not enough funding for it. But then there's always been an inequity where there are other day treatment and residential providers that don't have access to that, and they don't even have an application. They can't even apply for it or whatnot. And then, like, for instance, in Coos Bay, we fund 2 classrooms at Cairo's Coastline, but in Coos, they have Bob Bologna Ranch, which is a residential facility with DHS and OI placements, but that do not qualify for our ODE funding. And within Eugene, Looking Glass has multiple programs. Stepping Stone is something that we fund, but we don't fund their pathways. We don't fund their River Road, even though it's under the same umbrella. So and then the thing about pathways is in the same parking lot too, So it's like there's inequities of where certain sites are not being funded. And in Southern Oregon, in Shady Cove, there's Redemption Ridge, you know, and then there's some sites that do pop up that do qualify, but then because we restricted the number of sites, you know, they don't receive our funding. And also with another reason is, you know, funding reductions, you know, if our general fund is going to be reduced by 12%, does that mean 12% of our LTCT sites get, you know, reduced? We don't, you know, these are some of the questions that have to, and then we have to optimize the best use of taxpayer funds. And then what I mean by that is right now, if you're a grandfather, if you're on the list, you get your funding every year. You don't have to apply, you don't have to submit a RFP, you know, you automatically get your funding, whether you're a good programmer or not, you know, and so forth. So, and then I was asked before, like which are your top, you know, and luckily my response has always been, every site is different. They have a different clientele. You know, like Cordero's House, they work with sex offenders, you know, and in Homestead, in Pendleton, they're strictly all OIA youth, you know, and so forth. So every site, so you can't compare site A to site B in another town. And the client does, just like you would be able to compare Jasper Mountain and Child Center, even though it's relatively close by. So, so that's part of it. Now, oh, and then also here's this too. In the past, we've been threatened with lawsuits, and then I would not say it was to the level of the legal term of discovery, but I had a long conversation with an attorney that was retained by, I think, an EST or a school district, and we had a long conversation, and out of the spirit of transparency, I sent her all of our documents, you know, our fiscal sheets and so forth, and rules and so forth. So, and I told people at OD, if we're ever to be sued, if we were to lose, two things would happen. One, everybody would qualify, and the legislature would have to dump a whole bunch of money. Or two, LTCT would be eliminated, because that way then everyone is fair. You know, because right now you have people on LTCT that these are the haves, and the non-LTCT side, these are the have-nots. So if we were to lose, then, and the basis would be you're discriminating against, you know, the non, then, you know, those two things would happen. So, and then that's the reality of it. Yeah. So, and I talked to the person, and she said, oh yeah, no. So this is the proposal. In 1920 school year, resident school districts, not current ESDs or not, and for instance, in Portland Public School is working for, has two sites in Park Roses School District. In Springfield is working on the behalf of Lowell School District for Jasper Mountain. You know, so then the school district where the facility resides with the day residential treatment, in conjunction with the day residential treatment provider, will submit an application for OD funding for 21-23 biennium. And the reason for that is if they're not selected, like for instance, like Children's Farm Home is within Corvallis School District's boundaries. If that application is not approved or whatnot, then the entity that has to provide or fund it will be Corvallis School District, because they have the responsibility of fate. So that's why, so it's not LBL's responsibility to submit an application. It'd be Corvallis School District that would have to be the person, you know, the entity in conjunction with Trillium at Children's Farm Home that would have to submit the application.
So Sam, what about in our case where we have 3 different sites across the county and each one of them is in a different school district?
Right, and that's where you would have to decide, you know, which county, like which school district, or you could do all 3. You know, it would be the school districts.
But then we stand a chance of losing one or...
No, one application with the 3.
One application with all 3 signing off on it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But do you know how that would work with when we work with the ESDs? I mean, the ESD, Northwest Regional ESD, basically gets funding through the school district. So I don't know, like, would Tigard become responsible then and the ESD no longer, or how would that work?
Yes, and then for I believe Lifeways and Tigard, so it'll be Tigard School District with Lifeways would be submitting the application. Just like for St. Mary up in Beaverton, it'll be Beaverton School District with St. Mary's Home for the Boys would be submitting the application, not Northwest Regional ESD. And then for Southern Oregon ESD, it would be Ashland School District for the Family Solutions site in Ashland. It'd be Medford School District for the Family Solutions site in Medford, and Grants Pass School District for the Kairos and Family Solutions sites in Grants Pass.
Sam? This is Susan Peck in Southern Oregon ESD. That sounds different from what I think you just told Brian Hinson.
Right, no, because he has, the thing with Brian Hinson he has one institution number. Like Susan, your sites have different institution numbers.
Okay, so that I'm clear, you're telling me that instead of me doing that application, that it would come down to the 3 local school districts, so this is different.
Yes. For yours, that's the thing. Every LTCT site is different. For Susan, in your case, it'd be your local school district.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And that's to get the LTCT dollars? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's to get the Oregon Department of Ed LTCT funds.
So a follow-up question, Sam, Susan Peck again. So how will this be communicated to local school districts, or is that the responsibility of the ESD?
It is still a proposal. It's nothing. It's set in stone yet. You know,
Okay.
This is the first time this is the first mass meeting. I've had conversations with others already, and on Wednesday I have a meeting with DHS, OHA, and OIA at I believe 9:45. You know, in Salem to brief them about their thoughts and their input and so forth. So, and this is still. There's a lot of things that have not been fleshed out yet, but this is an opportunity for people to say, like Brian can say, Sam, thumbs down, you know, or some people may say thumbs up, you know, and so forth.
It seems like it would be really important though to talk to those districts,
Yeah.
especially those districts that will be impacted.
Yes.
Like Corvallis.
Right, and I'm willing to offer, you know. I've already been in communication where, well, in Multnomah area, they're going to get together with, I think, 10 different providers, and Portland is going to arrange for one mass meeting to talk with everybody. And then for you, if you want, I could schedule either a phone conversation or meet with Corvallis and you. And then, like, Susan, if you want, I can come down on a different day to, you know, Southern Oregon. You know, if you can corral all the your school districts all at one time, I'm willing to do that, either detail or in person.
So can I? Maybe I'm naive. What is the reasoning behind this change, as I understand it?
The reason is to eliminate the inequity of the haves and have-nots, and to give an opportunity for the have-nots to apply, to even have access to our OD LTCT funding. Right now, it was from 47, now we're at 38. You know, those 38 automatically get the funding every year without applying, without, you know, and so forth. And then the people that the have-nots, they don't ever have access to our funding. So they don't even have a chance. But this way, if we open it up to all the day and residential treatment facility, then everyone is equal, like everyone is treated the same.
I see.
Once that competitive process is done, allocated, what would the ongoing process be then afterwards? How would new sites come in or sites go away?
That, like, I would think, and then it hasn't been set in stone yet, like,
Yeah.
perhaps if you're accepted, for the sake of stability, for 4 years. You know, every 4
4-year
years.
process?
Right, because it'd be hard to do it every 2 years. And like, another thing we haven't been flushed out is, like, for instance, at children's, like, here, like, we fund some desks, computers, and so forth. If the funding is not, do we transfer all of that to another site? You know, like, that'd be a logistical nightmare of always having to transfer OD-funded equipment from site A to site B every 2 years. You know, and then I would hope that, you know, if you're accepted for 4 years. You know, that way, you know, the school district can plan, the treatment providers can plan, and so forth.
Even 4 years doesn't
Right.
seem like long enough, though, really.
This is
Consistency
Vero,
of staffing.
this is Vero
Hey,
with Boys
Sam.
and Girls Out who work with Portland Public. You said that you eliminate the have and have nots. Aren't you just creating a different list of have and have nots? So everybody has access, but for 4 years, there's a group of have nots and a group of haves, and then 4 years later, you still have a system in which all youth and agencies that are serving youth in long-term care and treatment programs, there's a large portion of that don't have access to the same educational resources as those that are funded.
Right, but then at least now, like Parrot Creek in Canby, DePaul in Portland, you know, youth programs, they have an opportunity to even apply for it. Right now, they don't even have an
Right.
opportunity to apply.
I get that, but you still will end up with a list of agencies and youth that will not have access to the services. You've just changed who's getting access to those services. So if they're not successful in the application, they still don't have services, or a program that has delivered services for a long time suddenly now is without those services. So you've just changed the have and the have not list.
Right. But the thing is, it would be where, let's say, like, for instance, I'm just going to say, like, Perry Center in Portland. If that application is not approved, then OD funding would not fund the educational program Perry Center, but Portland Public Schools would have to continue to provide the education because it's within their boundaries. So I know, but the level of funding will, you know, will be dependent on Portland Public Schools. You know, that's the rub.
Yeah.
And the rub is, that school district may be responsible for providing the services, but they're not going to provide the same service.
No.
There's not going to be.
Or the level of funding.
They won't be able to.
Right.
And you're gonna lose all the experience.
Right.
Every 4 years, you're gonna start over. I mean, it takes
Who's going to
time.
want, what teacher is going to want to come, especially a specialized teacher with all the training? What teacher is going to want to stay when they know that, okay, in 4 years, I'm not going to have a job, most likely.
Or it might.
Well,
And
I'm curious about, like, the ESD. Does our teachers are from the ESD? Are they no longer going to be able to be the teachers? Would we have to have Haggard providing the teachers providing the education and lose all of the everything from the ESD that we get?
That is, even right now, that is dependent on, like, oh, there's a lot of echo. Could you put yourself on mute, please? Like, here, the law states that, like, here, 3A, the school district where the facility resides is responsible, and then B says they may select.
made, says
Yeah. Like, for instance, Tiger to Watson may, and right now they may ask, you know, an ESD or another person to be providing that service.
The one question I have is serving Lane County, with Spring kids from all over the county.
Sandy, we need
So
people
would
to.
this then open up, say, 4J district who doesn't currently have a program, would that open them up to do an RFP for a program, Ethel district for a program? Are we?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially.
But then they would have to have a mental health provider that's
So they would
licensed.
already have to have
Well,
a program?
the application will ask, to submit proof of licensure from DHS.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have a list here of this is a list of all of DHS's license, and then here I can do it by day treatment, residential, and then this is a list of other different settings. For instance, but there's Bob Lonely Ranch, Boys and Girls Club, Child Center is under the Child Center, I wonder.
So how many total would you say there are? Take an estimate out there. How many?
I would estimate there was about 38, and they were not funding perhaps 30 or 40.
So over 60 programs out there that could apply, plus any other program that may be starting up.
Yeah.
Are we under Springfield probably?
Oh no, this is under
Okay.
DHS. This is under. I can do
That's it, mental health for children.
Or it's under mental health. Is that your?
Yeah, it's DJ, Child Center.
Okay, yeah, and so forth. So this is DHS's list of available sites.
Hey Sam, this is Mark from Portland. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mark.
And I had my phone disconnected for a second, so I'm not sure if this came up, but do you have even a draft of what the rubric would look like? So if people have to submit applications, next year they would know what to start preparing for?
I was going to go into that. Yeah, I was going to go into that. So, for instance, now open questions, comments. What does a successful LTCT look like? What factors? What should the categories of the rubric have? Academic achievement, ADM level versus slot utilization rate. For instance, if a site says they have 12 slots, but their ADM comes in at 2 or 3, attendance rate, number of contracts with state agencies. For instance, should a site that has contracts with DHS, OHA, and OIA, should they get priority over a site that only has a contract with DHS? Geographic isolation to other for instance, Hope Academy in Redmond, there's no other day treatment near. And then here's a map. Here's a listing of our sites, and here's a map, where our LTCT sites are. We used to have, there was a residential facility in Harney, and then Eastern Oregon Academy, they asked, but we couldn't fund them. And then there's nothing around that area, that was the only residential facility, and so forth, and they lobbied and so forth, So this is a map of where our current sites are. Should we go by average length of stay? Should we prioritize sites that have longer lengths of stay, but then versus sites that have shorter lengths of stay? But that would definitely hurt some sites that are there for stabilization, like the subacute unit at Wynn Watts, where they specifically are geared towards students that are suicidal, right off from the ER room. Submitted Title I-D data on outcomes on reading math scores. Should that be, and then treatment goals. What I did not intentionally include is, should we prioritize residential over day treatment or prioritize day treatment over residential. I feel that we've gone beyond prioritizing one over the other, so that's why I did not list that down. Because for those of you that are new, in the past, ODE did fund residential at 2.0, day treatment at 1.75. But we've gone past that where both day treatment and residential facilities, residential treatment are on equal footing. That is intentional. And what other the rubric? And so, Mark, the answer to your question is the rubric and the application has not been developed yet. I'm asking for your input. And most definitely, I think the review committee. I'm going to ask my colleagues at OHA, DHS, and OIA if they want to participate and be on the review committee. To see, because I'm anticipating a whole bunch in that, and I just don't want it to be myself reading all the applications and me deciding who's going to get it and who's not, and so forth. What rubric? What should the rubrics have?
I would think longevity of program. If you've been operating for 20 or 30 years,
longevity of program.
Have it down to, fine-tuned machine. There should be some grandfathering in for that, I would think.
About outcome.
I know, what type of outcome? Like, let's go learning academic outcome, or like SBAC scores. Like when you say outcome, like what outcome?
I'm thinking, following up with where students are that were in the program a year or two down the road. Were we successful?
After exit, okay?
I'm not sure how you would how to say this exactly, but programs, for instance, we are under Trillium, the DHS, and then Trillium for OHP. And Trillium will allow us to keep a child only so long. And then oftentimes we have to send it back to the district before they're completely ready because of the funding that they will allow us. Sometimes in the schools will pick up the contract and the child could stay. But if we're looking at length of stay, we don't always have control over how long a child stays with us. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Candace, as well. I mean, if we're doing our job too, the kids aren't staying with us for years,
I think we also have parents who pull against medical advice from us. So, not having things like that count against us.
Or kids pulled for families' complete lack of participation with mental health.
Right.
We don't have any control over the mental health providers. Rules.
They're moving, they move.
This is Rich from Trillium. I just don't think length of stay, unless you're talking about a program that's moving a kid in and out in 3 to 5 days, I just don't think length of stay matters. It's in the end, all these kids need, they legally need a free public education. And whether they're there for 10 days or a year and a half, and we have kids that fall under both of those extremes and everything in between. They need to get an adequate public education that is funded with parity, at least, with what your average public school is getting. And the funding formula, I think, is challenging with that because only half of the dollars for LTCT come from that same general fund that the other schools get. So when those things increase in a full way for a school, a normal school, or maybe normal is not the best, but a regular public school, if we're only getting half of that because the other half is coming from another fund that, unless it's also getting an increase, which my understanding is it often doesn't, these kids are falling farther behind. And these programs are falling farther behind. And in an indirect way, it's kind of a racist policy, because if you look at the demographics of the kids, especially in the BRS sector, it's a lot of kids of color. And they deserve the same education opportunities and funding that every other kid in the state of Oregon gets. And so do the kids who are getting mental health services, you know, whether they are or aren't kids of color. And I think that is the problem. And LTCT has always been fraught with a lot of political haggling over how it gets funded. And you know, and maybe the best thing is to just design something that makes sense for everybody, whether you're currently LTC funded or you're not trying to get in because your kids are being denied a free public education. It just seems like the system has got to give parity. And the truth of the matter is these kids that we're serving either on the BRS side or the mental health side or any other side, these are the kids that are not graduating and helping hold graduation rates down. And these are the kids that need that additional funding so that we can get these kids to graduation, which I think would be an objective of ODE.
Rich, you brought up a very good point about our having diversity, race, equity put in, and then I think I'll definitely put something of that into the application or rubric. And then I'd like to point out, you know, for the net operating expense, all of the net operating expense is higher than the per average ADM. Like for instance, like I do know, like the per average ADM in the past years, we're not at that number. I want to get back to that. Like for instance, 9,715. That was way above the state school fund average ADM. So that's the difference between ADM W versus net operating expense. The net operating expense is the cost that it costs that school district to educate that child. It's not how much they get. So LTCT, right, because it's slot times NOE, it's a little higher. And here I'm going to show our dropout data for JDEP, YSEP, and LTCT. We're at 14%. The other years, this for LTCT 13, 7, 5, 10, 14. I can pull out, which LTCT sites have the highest dropout, which LTCT sites have the lowest dropout. And the way the LTCT sites are assigned the dropout rate is a lot of times the kids, if they were not re-enrolled in another K-12 elementary, middle, or high school, that dropout gets attributed to that LTCT site because the LTCT site becomes the last school of record. Yeah, because, they didn't re-enroll or go anywhere. So that's why, and of course, JDEP has the highest dropout rate. When you look at the, statewide average of 3.55, that is another area that we need to work on, getting our kids back enrolled into the K-12 general education. Like, our dropout rate is atrocious. Thank you, Rich, for bringing that up.
Sam, this is Julie Smith from Pendleton. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Julie.
Hey, so I have some pretty big concerns. I've been writing them down, and I'm thinking it might be better just to craft a letter that kind of expresses them. But one of the things is that we're sort of at the mercy of treatment contracts as well, districts are. So you're talking about school districts have to apply to be the education providers for any treatment programs that reside in their district, which you're hoping would create better equity as far as funding goes, but you're still going to choose which sites get funded or not, and then districts are at the mercy of those treatment programs then to provide the education. And treatment programs have very different outcome indicators to receive their funding than schools do. So we're, looking at graduation rates, credits earned, academic outcomes, and in some cases, the treatment program is looking at closed cases. So they have a different motivation than we do. So I think it's problematic to have misaligned outcomes between the treatment and education, and then put the school district on the hook for outcomes that they often have little control over when all of the placement decisions are made by other agencies. Like, we don't get to place any students in any of the day treatment or residential treatment programs here. That's either an OYA decision or a Lifeways mental health decision, and then we're sort of at the mercy of those decisions if we don't get funded for that contract.
And Julie, you bring up a good point of the fact that inherently, because of the student characteristics of our students, inherently they don't do well on standardized tests. Their academic achievement is below, statewide average and so forth. And you
can't show growth.
You can't show growth, right? But it's like that's the type of kids that we have. And I think in about a month, there's going to be an OD internal audit released of our YSEP. Originally, our internal auditor was going to do an internal audit of LTCT and YSEP, but we dodged that bullet, and it's only YSEP.
Thank you.
But I think because he said, wow, this is enough already with YSEP. So, and then the internal auditor is comparing YSEP data versus the general K-12 school districts, and we said we can't do that, but he is insistent on doing that. And just like for YSEP youth correction, kids are delinquent, inherently they have, challenges inherently, and so you can't compare our graduation rate and our SBAC scores to regular sites, but he did, and so forth. So, and he has some recommendations for YSEP. And luckily we dodged the bullet of JDEP too, so that'll come. And when that's released, I can send that out.
So just a question, JSEP and YSEP, JDEP, YSEP being the responsibility of ODE.
And JDEP is the responsibility of ODE.
And JDE as well, JDEP. Is there any thinking of putting LTCTs under that same model?
No. The statute is right here. And then, to be honest with you, I would be against it, where OD become responsible for ordained residential treatment, because in reality, ODE is not as nimble. Like, for instance, if a day treatment site were to be developed in Springfield, it would take us quite a while to develop a contract, to find, to calculate the amount, and then what that would entail would be, and we did an estimate because 2 legislative sessions ago, they wanted ODE to be responsible for the cost of when sites close down. And what we estimate, because when a site closed down, a school district was, they had like lease requirements, and then layoff, unemployment, and all that kind of stuff. And then we said, for us to assume that risk, we would have to reserve a certain amount from our general fund for a fund that may not be utilized. So, like, for instance, if we became, so let's say right now there's 38, and if a new site were to open up, then we would have to have reserve for that site funding. So, because we can't go back and ask for more funding and so forth. So, and new sites are opening up around the state that we're not aware of and so forth. And then, and like I was with Tiger Tualatin yesterday, they were not even aware of Madrona Recovery. They just opened up, I think, like last May and so forth. And and then DHS and OHA and OI, they don't work on the same calendars we do. When the need arises, they may open up a site in November or March, it doesn't happen in, they don't wait for our calendar of September or July and so forth. So if there was a legislative concept where day and residential treatment facilities were to fall under ODE, I'm being honest, I would write a bill analysis saying no. Yeah, it'd be just, yeah.
So I would think on your rubric somewhere, accreditation, whether the program is accredited through a district or ESD, or because they've gone through the process themselves, but that it sounds like if you've got a lot of programs up and running that aren't under ODE, who's watching how they're providing the educational piece? It seems like there would be no oversight of those.
Okay, Candace brought up a good point, and then we ran into this every year. And what do you mean by run into this? Like, for instance, for our day and residential treatment sites, when a parent or probation officer has a concern, I can go to you because we have a contract, we have an agreement, and we can investigate. But then at another site that we don't have a contract with, I don't have jurisdiction to go into that site. For instance, because in that school district and that, like, for instance, I'm just saying, let's say, like DePaul, if a complaint came in for DePaul, I wouldn't be able to say, DePaul, I want to come in, review your education program, and then they'll say, where's your authority to come in? And then because I don't have anything with them. But then for the 38 right now, because we have an agreement, if there is a concern, I can call Dan up, Dan, I got this parent complaint, and then so forth. And Dan would say, if you can't tell me, well, Sam, I don't need to talk to you. You have no jurisdiction. We have this agreement, and so forth. But Dan would never do that. Dan and I, I always return Dan's calls right away, right, Dan? And he returns my calls right away too. So so that's a good point. There are a lot of day and residential treatment providers, that I don't currently oversee. And then there was 2 years ago where there was a SPED complaint, and then that school district lost. And then I was out of it because it's not one of our OD LTCT sites.
So in the proposal for your application process, it's the school district and the treatment side that are applying together. Is that how you're going to work?
Yes.
So they both have to work together, and then both sides have to meet all your criteria in order to be funded.
Yes.
For the education.
Yeah.
And on the OHA side for the mental health, is there any impact on the mental health side?
For the mental health side, what we're pretty much going to be asking is proof of licensure, like that they're licensed by DHS or OHA. And then I have, like, sometimes when I go to certain sites, I take a picture of DHS's licensure, and it'll state whether they're shelter care, whether they're residential, and the license is right there. So
really, I guess what my question is, there's no real scrutiny of the mental health side. It's all on the education side.
For us, yes, for us. But then for the mental health side, that's DHS, that's OHA, that's OI. They have licensing units, and they have people that, like, OI, I think, has like 3 or 4, and DHS has 3 or 4, and they have people that go around and.
Yeah, I think what I've heard here from some of the comments is that as education side, we have no control over what the mental health and the kind of kids they're serving, their criteria. So we're being judged strictly on the education side when there are all these other factors on the mental health side that we have no control over. And so I'm just saying that it seems skewed to me.
Right, I think the application should be more towards the education side, not the mental health side, because you're right. We don't have, and then there was another site where they had to close mid-year because that site was about to receive, where they received complaints, they just like abuse complaints, so they voluntarily, the mental health provider closed, and so forth. That is that, and then it wasn't against the education staff, it was against, the mental health providers and so forth. So, and then luckily they reopened and so forth. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? I know some people there's uneasiness.
I think you make a great point. We operate in their facilities sometimes, so.
Yep. And for people in Vita,
We wouldn't be there if they weren't there.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about the impact, because the impact on services for kids, education services. But again, it's the have-nots, it's still going to continue to be the have-nots and the haves, no matter how you slice up the pie. It's going to continue to be that way, given the funding. So I just don't see a win in any way for anybody.
Sam, will there be, looking at your maps earlier, I mean, there will still be some consideration for regional services, like you were saying, with Harney being so isolated. I mean, we're the same thing in Douglas County. We're the only show for the whole county.
So what's your question?
I mean, if we were to go away, nobody else is going to open. So if you take our portion of the pie, so to speak, and give it to Coos, it's just a transition of where the services are being provided. There's not going to be, there's not going to be any services in Douglas County then.
Right. And so that's why one of my questions, should geographic isolation from other, providers, should that be, one of the rubric criteria? And we're doing this early, and hopefully we can notify people by January or February of next year to give school districts a year time, to plan for it wouldn't make sense for us to let them know in the second year of January, and then in June or July, the school district has to start funding. That way it gives them a year, and that's why hopefully if the application goes out, they can work on it like May or June or during the summer. That's due in October and so forth. Because if we did this in the second year of the biennium, some school districts will only have 3 or 4 months to start finding money for salaries and so forth. So that's why we're trying to do this ahead.
Is there a timeline on your development of this application and rubric?
Yes, I sent it out.
Is that this piece of paper here?
Yes.
Okay.
And these are all drafts. My computer, you guys see how slow my computer is. Process. February notifies, school districts, revise, develop the application rubric, finalize application rubric, early May, send out applications. Applications are due, hopefully September or October, review applications. Then November, notify, allow, and then I have to put this in, allow for appeals and reconsiderations in December. Due process. You can't just say this final. There's got to be a way for people to, say, we forgot this, we forgot that. Final determination, and begin to calculate the allocations. And this is for 21-23. It's not for the upcoming biennium. It's set. Yeah. And these are just drafts and so forth. And I'm going to be honest, I had a conversation with a school district that did not have LTCT funding, and that school district was happy, I'm going to be honest, word got out, and then that school district was happy, because now they can at least, equal footing, they can apply. And then for those of you that are uncomfortable speaking out on a, via VTEL or meeting here, feel free to give me a call, send me an email, and and then I can have a conversation. And if you want, depending on distance and scheduling availability, I will be more than happy to come out, meet with your stakeholders and so forth to answer questions. Any other thoughts or comments? Springfield? No? Okay. Well, then for Win-Watts, Sarah, it'd be Reynolds School District, right? Not for the public school. Yeah. Okay, next item of our agenda. Okay, so right now we have 4 out of the 39 sites that have done the monitoring, and I've got a few more scheduled for the month of March and May with LBL too. So if you haven't scheduled your monitoring with myself or Adam, please do so. We have to complete it by June 30th. We get monitored by USDOE too. And so then one of the things that they monitor us is if we go out to monitor you, and so if we don't monitor you, then we get our money withheld. And we have to really be good, not just for Title 1D, because what does Title 1D tie into, fall under? Title 1. Because everyone understands Title 1A is for free and reduced, right? But Title 1D is still part of Title 1A. It's not Title 2 so there's A is the paragraph for free and reduced, and D is the paragraph for neglected and delinquent. So we do not want to jeopardize Oregon's Title I funding. That's why I have to harp on everybody. Like, I need your stuff, because if Title 1A in reality, Title 1D is about $500,000 for YSEP, about $900,000 for LTCT, but for Title 1A, we're dwarfed. How much does Springfield get for Title 1A?
3.3.
Yeah, I don't want to jeopardize Title 1A. Do not want to jeopardize Title I funding. Yeah.
This is Sandy at Desert.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi, just for clarification, is this an annual monitoring of all sites?
No, what it is it's a 3-year cycle. That's why last year some sites were monitored last year, and then what we did is we allowed sites to say when you want to do it, and then for instance North Bend last year and Forest Grove last year said we want to do it. They were ready last year, so they were monitored last year. So that's why this is the last year of the 3-year cycle. So and then 1920 will be a new cycle.
Thank you for clarifying.
Of a new 3-year, and what it is USDOE says we have to do at least one on-site visit every 3 years. And then in the past we did that, and the year that you're not monitored, you have to submit a desk audit, but we got rid of that. You don't have to do the desk audit every year. We'll just do one on-site monitoring once every 3 years. And
thank you.
The form was emailed out. If you want me to email out the form, I will again. But here's a heads up for the new cycle starting 1920 to 21-22. The form will be switched because USDOE changed their monitoring form. Because our monitoring form needs to mirror USDOE's monitoring form. So the current monitoring form we're using right now was in effect before, but now that USDOE changed their monitoring form, we felt it was too late. We're midstream, there no sense changing our monitoring form. So for the next 3-year cycle, the monitoring form will be revised.
And it's fiscal and programmatic?
It's more programmatic. And the way we handle the fiscal is every year, in addition to the expenditure report, in June, there's a federal expenditure report. And then that is to show us your 15 to 30% of your Title 1D funds are allocated for transition. So that's our fiscal, so that is our fiscal way of showing US DOE that we're meeting the fiscal requirements. So that's just, because you submit the quarterly, but at each year, June, you submit that extra piece. That's the reason why, yeah. That's a good question. So it's more programmatic, that monitoring report. Any other questions?
I just have a question. I know
Sure.
that around the title, and I know that you sent us a recent email with the data from the survey under title, and then you indicated that in the future, it wouldn't be aggregated, it would be by program,
Yes.
by school district.
Yes. Well, USDOE, this year they wanted it by site, but then they switched it. They said they'll keep it the same where I aggregate everyone's totals and then I submit that.
By site, by school district, exactly?
By site, by site.
By site, so would it fall under the school district's data then?
I think it would
Be incorporated into a school district's data?
I don't know how USD is going to do it. I don't know. I think it might be, I don't know how USD wanted it. But I do know, as USDOE's email said, they didn't go by site. You know, they went by
The whole state.
yes,
Right.
yes, they went by the whole state. Yes, and then I can show you what that what it looks like. Shoot. Thought I had it. Yeah, I don't have it, but it's a long spreadsheet because it's every single 38. There's 39 tabs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? And Julie Smith, I'm supposed to go out there for LeGrand's review for Rising Star. So, you know, since you're on the way, I'm more than happy to stop by and meet with you and IMESD and LeGrand if you want.
Sounds great. Maybe we can set up a meeting with the four of us, three of us.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So, if no one has any other questions or comments, we'll transition to our next part of the meeting, which will be the tour of the Child Center, hosted by Candace Carter. Thank you, everybody, and I'm gonna log off from GoToMeeting. And if you have any further comments or suggestions, email me or feel free to give me a call. All right, thank you, everybody.
Again, we have Zach over here if you want to grab something. How many of you would like to take a tour of the classroom? As I said, I can do it in 2 groups. Maybe Mark could help me with one group. If we have more with you. Some of you have already been here, and I think the biggest change right now is where we have the White House in the middle of the campus is a bare lot. Finally had to take that down due to age and kind of slipping off